Hello. So this is an article in the Daily Mail by Alex Brummer, who writes that Reeves is being prepared by Sir Keir Starmer as the sacrificial lamb being offered up to the gods of finance. And Starmer is doing that, according to Mr. Brummer, in an effort to save his own rather precarious job. I admire Mr. Brummer's courage in making that prediction because it does rather run counter to almost every political orthodoxy I can think of. If you look at the history of politics in the UK, when a Prime Minister has a problem with the Chancellor of the Exchequer, it's usually not so good for the Chancellor, but it's also pretty terrible for the Prime Minister. That's the historical precedent. You just look it up and see what happens when there are rows between Chancellor and Prime Minister. So most historians of politics would say that if Starmer has any sense at all, he'd be doing everything he can to keep in his Chancellor's good books, even if the books have been somewhat cooked. However, that doctrine doesn't take into account Sir Keir's almost supernatural ability to make the wrong choices in any given situation. And financial analysts who think that Starmer will hang on for dear life to Ms. Reeves are basing their prognoses on the assumption that Sir Keir has studied and learnt lessons from history. But you see, the problem with Sir Keir is that history doesn't appear to be his strong subject. I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. So just to read a little bit of Mr. Brummer's article, he says he's had lots of experience and has watched administrations of all political colours, both in the UK and in the USA, swept into the abyss by underestimating the raw power of financial markets. He said when he was Washington correspondent in 1976, he had a front row seat to Britain's humiliating request for a loan from the International Monetary Fund after the pound went into free fall as James Callaghan's Labour government was swamped by surging oil prices, runaway inflation and untrammelled trade union power and wage demands. Sort of sounds a little déjà vu-ish, doesn't it? And Britain's ignominy was a rehearsal for a similar implosion as the recently deceased and eulogised President Jimmy Carter was defenestrated from the White House. The lesson of such calamities is that any government that loses control of the economy is condemned to the political wilderness. There are other difficulties involved with throwing Reeves to the wolves. Apart from all of this stuff here, he talks about Liz Truss as well, which was a famous example. But in the case of Keir Starmer, whom would he choose as Reeves's successor? I suppose it would be too much to ask that he chooses someone with a CV that actually details any sort of a reality. And of course, there's the Damoclean sword hanging over the Labour Party. That is, many of the new intake were local councillors before they were elected as MPs in 2024. And if it can be found that these new MPs previously sat in councils that colluded with rape gangs, and which did not, then that would end up with yet another Chancellor skulking out of number 11 into well-deserved obscurity, if they're lucky. So, that's going to cut down the choices quite a lot, because in this present intake of new MPs, there are at least 61 who are ex-councillors. There will be more, I just found 61. After that, when you've excluded all of those, you then have to find someone of moderate intelligence, which in a party full of Angela Rayners, Wes Streetings and David Lammies is going to reduce your options rather a lot. So, okay, hypothetically, having then found some MPs with honest CVs, no record of local government administration, and the proud possessor of at least 4 or 5 GCSEs, you know, there was a time when the Labour Party was absolutely chock full of brains. It really was. It was the place for the intellectual, for the learned, and the working class swats. You might not have agreed with their politics. Well, who does? Or their economic theories. But in most cases, you couldn't fault the quality of their IQs, their literacy, their eloquence, their fluency. That was in the, 60s and 70s, I suppose. And then each generation of the party, the grandees, have been a cerebral and creative step down from the previous generation. And now I think they've gone down just about as far as they can go. And the party appears to consist mostly of people who embarrass themselves and everyone else on Mastermind, and who go on marches with people who are so unutterably thick that they need a drum beat and a caller to remember the slogans they're supposed to be chanting. Okay, so yeah, let's take another look at this theoretical replacement for Rachel Reeves. There's a CV you can trust. Remember, this is all just hypothetical. There's no involvement with a dodgy council. There's some sort of intelligence. And then you have to find someone with a little financial experience. And just remember, walking past the bank once a week on your way to the job centre doesn't count. You know, offhand, I can't think of any Labour MP that might fit that bill. Of course, there might be. I'm hardly an expert on Labour MPs, and there are so many of them now. But even if Sir Keir did find the paragon I've just detailed, there is then the small matter of corruption, in which the present government appears to be immersed chin deep. He's just appointed Lord Mandelson as the ambassador to the USA. I mean, is that the best he can do? The noble lord originally lost his job in Tony Blair's government because of some financial fiddling to do with his mortgage. I don't remember the details. And now Tulip Siddiq, Starmer's good friend and his anti-corruption minister, has just lost her job because of some fiddling with her mortgage, or rather, it wasn't a fiddling with the mortgage, it was the lack of one, her house apparently being a gift from the famously corrupt ex-Prime Minister of Bangladesh. But, I digress. You can see how all of these requirements are going to cut Starmer's choices right down. I'm not too sure, but it's possible, I suppose, that Starmer might be able to trawl someone out of the backbenches, you know, someone who earned weekend money doing the checkout at a corner shop while at high school, something like that. Look, all right, I'm being flippant. But the truth is, the Labour Party is conspicuously bereft of competent business people. I don't think there's one single MP who was ever a business owner. There are a lot of student activists and, as I said, quite a few ex-councillors and a lot of union bums on seats. But there doesn't seem to be anyone with solid financial experience, including Rachel Reeves by the looks of things. Things are so bad, I've even heard people talking about bringing Gordon Brown back. this is absolute desperation. Apart from the fact that Gordon Brown was not exactly the most beneficial of chancellors and made a career of cheating with the books, it's a pretty rum old deal if the government has to raid the retired remnants of the previous administration for brains. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. And no amount of turning up at press conferences in his shirt sleeves is going to make us feel that he has even the smallest handle on the fix he's got himself, his government and our country into. OK, till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.